In the social media justice system, netizens are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the content creators who investigate drama, and the Supreme Court Justice of the comment section who judges the offenders. These are their stories.
Namaste. Court is in session. You may all take several seats. I'm the Supreme Court Justice of the comment section. You can call me the Supreme or Judge Rebel Pebble. Now, I've been judging people in the comment section from right here in my mother's dimly lit basement for years, whether it be politicians, news media channels, influencers, sportsmen, commercial artists, actors, musicians, reality TV stars, and real artists. They have all been subject to my judgment. I've been doing this work on almost every platform in the metaverse and beyond for ages. Just to give you a bit of context, I grew up jacking off to people like Pamela Anderson, Carmen Electra, and Hrithik Roshan half the time. And then the rest of the time, I would be leaving my comments on places like YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and so on. After being promoted to my new role as Chief Justice of the comment section, I have made it my duty to rule on social media matters affecting netizens. That's who these courts represent: netizens. From Africa to America to Australia and Asia, my jurisdiction covers the entire World Wide Web. Today, we set our focus on India, the land of beautiful women, spices, and Hrithik Roshan. Now, don't worry, Hrithik is not the subject of today's case. I doubt he would ever do anything so wrong as to end up in my courtroom. But if he did, I would certainly get him off. I'd get him off real good, especially if he was charged for being too hot in public. If you've ever seen Krish, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Whew. Krish 3. But, however, we are here today for my judgment on a pre-trial motion submitted by the defense to dismiss the indictment against Sidharth Malhotra brought forth by the Twitter Mafia. With the upcoming theatrical release of Manike, thank God, a lot of buzz and speculation has resurfaced online over Sidharth. This is in part due to the fact that Sidharth is the star of that movie. Now, while the exact storyline of the film seems to be a closely guarded secret by T-Series Productions, evidence presented during this pre-trial motion hearing has shown that the film centers around the Hindu god Chitragupta, played by R.J. Devan. In the film, Sidharth Malhotra plays Ayan Kapoor, a man who dies in a car accident and goes on to the afterlife, where he is judged by Chitragupta on his good and bad deeds on earth. In a sense, Chitragupta is kind of like me. He keeps track of humans and the good and bad deeds they do on earth. And then he decides whether they get to go to heaven or hell. The only difference with me is you don't have to die to see me. I'll judge you right here and right now. Now, according to Hindu scripture, Chitragupta's name means rich in secrets or secret of the mind. And him being a greater king among the Rajakas or little kings, you can think of him as the Lord of Justice. The origin story for Chitragupta is that he was conceived in the mind of God, or Brahma, who sat and meditated for 11,000 years, and when he opened his eyes, Chitragupta was just standing there with the pen and inkpot, ready to keep receipts on everybody's ass. So yes, basically, he's me. I'm the Chitragupta of these internet streets. And so before I reveal my judgment on this case, I think it best to outline my reasoning for the judgment I have reached on this complicated case. We live in a highly politicized world. Remember when politics just used to be another genre of society like sports, entertainment, engineering, law, and medicine? It used to be that politics would only take up a small part of our attention spans, but now it has grown so far out of control and oversaturated the media that there is literally politics in everything. I mean, just last week I had to throw out a case involving a prosecutor who wanted to lay a charge of cancellation against a supermarket for selling low fat dairy products on the grounds that the supermarket was body shaming customers. Now, before I delve into the details of the evidence that was shown in my court over the past few weeks in regards to Twitter Mafia versus Sidharth Malhotra, it would be remiss of me to not paint the hidden picture behind the backdrop of this case. My mentor used to say, political correctness gets a lot of people hurt. What he meant by that was that when we examine certain things under the lens of politics, we immediately put the needs of some groups above the needs of other groups. That's what politics is. It's about choosing one side over another and then eviscerating the losing side. Political people have shown great delight in crushing their opponents. In a Harvard Business Review article, Ely, Meyerson, and Davidson say that, and I quote, in cultures regulated by political correctness, people feel judged and fear being blamed. They worry about how others view them as representatives of their social identity groups. They feel inhibited and afraid to address even the most banal issues directly. People draw private conclusions. Untested, their conclusions become immutable. Resentments build, relationships fray, and performance suffers. End quote. You can read the entire article on the Harvard website, hbr.org. Now, inside my comments section courtroom, I do my best to separate my personal politics from each case, and I only send people to hell if they deserve it. Outside of this courtroom, however, the comments section can wreak havoc in the lives of filmmakers especially, whose main goal is to just make a profitable film so that they and the 15,000 people that it took to make the film can feed their families. That means that they have to worry about satisfying large audiences, and the best way to end their worries is by giving audiences entertainment that they want to see. It is the logical assertion of this court that no serious filmmaker or producer sets out to make a bad film. This court recognizes that there are filmmakers who don't make bad films, but they do make outdated and tone-deaf films that serve a particular agenda. Therefore, we can't write off the idea that some films are indeed ill-conceived on purpose. So already, it is clear that when looking at cases in the entertainment world, intent is very important. The intent of the filmmakers takes a higher priority over the political implications of the film or the work itself. We all know that it is the job of politicians to divide people because politicians are constantly seeking new voter demographics. In the 70s, it was women versus men. In the 2000s, it was the LGBT voters versus heteronormative society. And now we see an upswing in culture and identity politics versus traditional values. Take, for example, the term cultural appropriation. This is a term used by politicians. and injected into common society as an attempt to sway more voters by appealing to the niche demographics of society. Why? Because the only thing politicians are good at is inventing new problems before solving the original problems they identified and promised to solve. All of this is fine if you're a fan of politics. Do you, baby? But this way of thinking and operating does not translate well to the world of arts and entertainment. Entertainment, by its very definition, is the action of providing or being provided with amusement or enjoyment. And that's according to the Oxford Dictionary. Amusement and enjoyment cannot be experienced if political correctness is top of mind. If you are constantly picking apart the casting choices, storyline, or creative execution of a movie, then perhaps you need to find a new hobby. You can go to Texas. Isn't that where they golf? Having said that, however, it would be careless to ignore the many valid concerns audiences have about the entertainment industry and how movies affect their daily lives. It is true that movies do influence people in real life in both positive and negative ways. The ways in which films depict people and situations is emulated by audiences to some degree. So the growing concerns of audiences over the process of filmmaking, or any form of entertainment for that matter, does have a valid point. It must be said by this court that since movies are not inherently political, unless they're directed by Joseph Goebbels, if we apply the standards of political correctness to them, then there is bound to be dissatisfaction either way. There seems to be this strange pressure for filmmakers to do what politicians themselves have been failing to do for centuries, and that is to create consensus, to bring all people together. I mean, just look at the world. Politicians can't even go a day without antagonizing each other, threatening to blow it all up with nukes. So, if politicians can't even deliver on their own campaign promises, why in God's name do you expect filmmakers to deliver a film that would save the world? Especially when it is not even in their job description to do so. This issue was the main point of contention argued in this case between the prosecution, Twitter Mafia, and the defendant, Sidharth Malhotra. Now, it is important that I remind you that this was only a pre-trial motion hearing to determine whether or not the indictment of cancellation sought against Sidharth by the Twitter Mafia constitutes any prosecutable offences under this court. Cancellation is a serious charge, and this court does not enter into a cancellation trial lightly. As to why Sidharth has been singled out, the prosecution's claim that as the main character in the film Manike, thank God, he is responsible for its message. This is an extremely serious case, and by the end of my statement, you will know if I found enough due cause to pursue a cancellation charge against Sidharth. In opening statements of this trial, Sidharth's defense presented the argument that for decades, actors have had to bear the unfair treatment and brunt of any social media hate storms that their films inspire from the public. During the trial, the defense presented a number of corroborating witnesses and cited past precedent to support their argument. This court heard from Tiger Shroff, who starred in the box office bomb Heropati 2. Reviewers didn't blame the actors for the flop, but social media did. Continuing their case, Sidharth's defense also examined past cases that failed to go to trial under the same charges, namely the cases of Twitter Mafia versus Scarlett Johansson, Twitter Mafia versus Christian Bale, and Twitter Mafia versus Hailey Bailey. All these past cases failed to reach the necessary benchmark to elicit cancellation charges, and they were all subsequently dismissed from this court. The defense also presented expert witness testimony from Bhumi Pednekar, who was dragged for her skin tone in the 2018 film Bala. We also heard from Robert Downey Jr., who explained his role in Tropic Thunder. The defense showed that both Bhumi and Robert's roles were well received by the public overall, and the defense made a strong case as to why the charges against Sidharth, and by extension Manike, thank God, should be dismissed. On the opposite side, in presenting their case, the Twitter Mafia said that the targeting of actors over politically incorrect movies was fair. In their opening statements, the Twitter Mafia gave two main reasons for this. First, they argued that actors are the most immediate contact audiences have with films. They illustrated their point by showing the court a number of pictures of people even I couldn't recognize. It turned out that those were some of the most prolific movie producers of our time. The fact that we couldn't recognize the people behind the camera, while we could recognize the people in front of the camera, was a strong argument as to why audiences should naturally hold actors responsible for an entire film. The Twitter Mafia bolstered their argument with their second point, when they showed evidence that it is actors who are the ones who receive the biggest public accolades and social influence when their films go well. The Olympics doesn't give out a massive gold statuette for excellence. Athletes just get a gold coin, the prosecution remarked. And with great reward comes great sacrifice, they continue to add. On top of the luxurious lifestyle that their careers afford them, the Twitter Mafia stated that it was an actor's responsibility to choose projects which reflected the temperament of the people and the temperature of the times we live in. In rebuttal to the defense's evidence, the Twitter Mafia was brimming with case files, and the first one they presented was the case of Maddie Ziegler. Now, even though Ziegler was never officially charged with cancellation, her role in the film Music, where she played an autistic young woman, drew a ton of ire from the Twitter Mafia at the time. The Twitter Mafia also presented the case of Hollywood star Roseanne Barr, who was charged and convicted of cancellation in 2018. They referenced the case of Bollywood actor Ranbir Kapoor, who was charged and convicted of cancellation in 2022. They also mentioned Bollywood star Alia Bhatt, whose case is still pending over her film Darlings, which the Twitter Mafia say glorifies domestic violence against men. Then there was the complicated case of Sonakshi Sinha, star of the unforgettable blockbuster Dabangg and of course Akira. Others included as examples by the Twitter Mafia were Amir Khan and Akshay Kumar. The prosecution used these cases to demonstrate that actors in the past have been held to a similar standard that Sidharth is being held to by them. It must be noted in my summation, however, And this is something the defense did bring up during the motion hearing, and that is the fact that a large percentage of the cancelled actors mentioned during the trial were not actually cancelled for their film roles, but for personal behavioral issues outside of the film. The defense for Sidharth cited that American comedian Dave Chappelle to prove that point. Chappelle was charged with cancellation, but was ultimately found not guilty by this court in 2021. The defense argued that Chappelle was a perfect example of why these charges against Sidharth should be dismissed immediately. But then again, Chappelle is a comedian and not an actor. So it was really necessary for me in making my judgment to wade through the information presented to the court in order to find the pertinent facts to this case. And the only way for me to do that was to equally consider the evidence against Sidharth and the testimony of his intention as seen through his previous work. Because what this case was really about was intent. Did Sidharth intend to offend the Twitter Mafia? Well, the side that sufficiently proved Sidharth's intent, whether innocent or guilty, was the side that I ultimately ruled in favor of. Now, the tricky nature of determining intent rests in the relative secrecy actors have toward their choices in films. As the defense for Sidharth presented, there are cases where actors do not choose to do certain films, but they are actually forced to do them, whether it's by contractual obligations or the fact that they need the money to survive. Actors don't really have the luxury to choose what films to star in, unless they are, Hrithik Roshan. They don't really have a choice. The defense made a compelling example when they said, if you go to a restaurant and order a hamburger, and when the waiter brings it to you, you have a problem with it, you don't go and cancel the server at the restaurant. They didn't prepare the meal. No, you go and ask for another meal, or you just pay and leave the restaurant and leave a bad Yelp review and never go back again. If you start shouting at the waiter, then you are a Karen and I will cancel you. The defense was saying that movie patrons should voice their opinions by either giving movie reviews and feedback, or they could simply just change the channel. But to go on social media campaigns to destroy an actor's livelihood was the behavior of the criminally insane, according to the defense. Admittedly, that was a good point, but the Twitter Mafia struck back at them by saying that ordinary people work as waiters in restaurants, while Hollywood and Bollywood actors are rich beneficiaries of nepotism and the casting couch. So, unlike a powerless, low wage server at a fast food joint, these actors that they are bringing to court have the resources to make better choices. And so, when they don't make better choices, it is to be expected that the reaction is more intense. Now, nepotism and casting couch are real practices in the industry. But just because they're a common occurrence in the film biz, it doesn't mean that Sidharth Malhotra is a part of it. Right? Well, members of the gallery, at this point, this is when things took a more serious turn in the case. On cross-examination of the accused, Sidharth, the Twitter Mafia wanted to know exactly how he came to be such a big star. In an industry lined with the broken dreams of outsiders. How did he get in when so many never do? They asked. And since the defense had opened the door to that line of inquiry by bringing up the struggles most actors face to get work, I allowed it. The court needed to know, was Sidharth also a struggling actor, an outsider, or was he a beneficiary of nepotism or other such luck? And this is where things got complicated. Now, after a short adjournment and a meeting in my chambers with the prosecution and defendant, I chose to allow into evidence a certain piece of discovery that had been previously inadmissible during the hearing. This was Evidence Exhibit G, which was related to Karan Johar. Now, this immediately proved to be a considerable blow to the defense's position because it started to cast doubt on Sidharth Malhotra's intentions. The Twitter Mafia claimed that he was a star kid. They claimed that he was related to Karan Johar's colleague Punit Malhotra, who actually gave Sidharth his first job on Karan's production team for the film My Name is Khan, a job which later led to Karan giving Sidharth his first role in Student of the Year in 2012, after an alleged trip they both took to Paris. This was a bombshell accusation which Sidharth's defense vehemently denied. They exclaimed that there was no relation between he and Punit, and that they only happened to share the same surname by chance. A statement which the Twitter Mafia responded to by then accusing Sidharth of getting his first film role by doing private modeling for Keijo. The prosecution then entered into evidence Exhibit H and Exhibit J, tweets by Kangana Ranaut and her sister Rangoli Chandel. Now you'll remember that at the Filmfare Awards ceremony last year, Kangana ignored Karan twice. She also posted a tweet calling Karan a mafia daddy of the film business. Well, the infamous tweet by her sister Rangoli reads as follows, and I quote, Karan tells them what to wear and who to sleep with, end quote. These shocking allegations made by Rangana and Chandel rocked the courtroom. But the Twitter Mafia didn't stop there. They made a dramatic, unwarranted outburst that Keijo and Sid were actually involved in a 2-year relationship from 2010. They even claimed the two were spotted in Paris together on vacation right before Sidharth became a star. Now, obviously, I had to strike all of that from the record, as those claims could not be independently corroborated. As you can imagine, the courtroom was in a frenzy at this point, and it took a while to restore order after that outburst by the prosecution. Ultimately, none of what they said had any bearing on my decision, and I am also now instructing all of you in the gallery listening right now to disregard those last statements and to have them stricken from the record. In the law of this court, if two adults want to engage in a consensual relationship, then so be it. Even if one is a boss and the other is an employee, it is completely legal, so long as it's consensual. If a producer propositions an actor, it is well within the actor's discretion to accept the proposition or not. While it is not best business practice to engage in work relationships, it is, okay if you like each other, you like each other. And in some cases where it's not about being attracted to each other or liking each other, it could be transactional. Then as long as both of you get what you want, that's fine as well. You know, If the producer gets to see your booty and you get to be a wealthy, award winning superstar, that's your indaba. But then don't come to my court 10 years later after you've spent your money and ask me for compensation. Okay? Again, we're talking about consenting adults with no force involved. The argument that you had to do it for the money, that you had to, you know, break your moral code in the casting room for the money, that argument is not acceptable in this court. A brilliant example of someone who, stood up against this kind of thing is an actress who was propositioned by a producer, and her name is Armin Sandhu. In video evidence shown to me in chambers, the Bollywood actress Armin Sandhu and model is seen in a video double slapping film director Deepak Mishra and exposing him in public for asking her to participate in the casting couch. I also saw an interview of Ranveer Singh talking about how a male producer propositioned him and he just refused and walked away from the job. Let them be shining examples to this court on this issue. Just walk away. Now, like I said earlier, if you looked past all those distractions, this case was really about intent. Did Sidharth take part in Manike, thank God, to offend people? Or is he simply just a victim of a rabidly, overly litigious Twitter mafia who is hell bent on destroying anything on earth that moves and breathes? Or is the defense wrong? Is the Twitter mafia just doing their civic duty of being a voice for the voiceless, the last bastion of justice before this court? Were they right in saying that Sidharth was just another pretty boy outsider who was at the right place and right time and with the right surname, who now needs to be held accountable for his acquired privilege? Well, after listening to both sides go back and forth, I ordered a short adjournment to review both sides of the arguments. But then, in a last minute twist, the defense asked to present one last piece of evidence, one last piece of exculpatory evidence to the court. The evidence they presented saw this entire case take a shift. According to the defense, that's Sidharth Malhotra's team, the real reason that the Twitter mafia was after their client was not because of corruption in Bollywood, but because of a coordinated political action to destroy India's economic structure through the film industry. According to the defense, nationalists were behind this entire case, and Sidharth was just the latest victim in their 100-year-long campaign of violence against the establishment, they claimed. Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or the defense, as the Illuminati of India. They claimed that this shadowy secret group is guilty of discrimination as it is only open to men. The defense also said that the RSS follows the Chatuvarna system, or the caste system for the English speakers, which essentially means that they also believe in the practice of nepotism. So then the question of the court was, why would the Sangh be involved in a campaign of influencing regular people on Twitter to complain about Bollywood movies? Why? Why would they claim that Bollywood was undermining their traditional culture by making movies about Hindu gods like Chitragupta in Siddharth's upcoming film? Shouldn't they be pleased that Hindu culture was being celebrated on screen instead of being ignored, as often happens in other film industries which whitewash history? These were the big questions that the defense asked, and unfortunately, the court never received an answer. The defense tried to find a member of this organization or someone who was from the Hindutva school of thought so that they could testify in court on the matter. But since the group is so secretive, we couldn't hear testimony from them. Perhaps the social media influencer called the Frustrated Indian, also known as TFI, could appear in front of my court at a later time to give his statement on why he thinks the RSS is being accused by the defense of allegedly being behind this entire case as part of the Boycott Bollywood movement. Now, the Twitter Mafia themselves could not respond to the defense's request on any of these later issues related to the RSS. And in a final push by Sidharth, the defense presented his past film roles as proof that Malhotra's intentions in filmmaking were never ever political, but artistic. His 2015 movie Brothers, which is a Hindi remake of the Tom Hardy film Warrior, saw Malhotra undergo the greatest physical transformation of his life. He was practically unrecognizable from his breakout role in Student of the Year. And now in Manike, thank God, he looks completely different again. Sidharth Malhotra is only really interested in playing parts that challenge him as an actor and artist, pleaded the defense. And they certainly had the filmography to prove it. It was at this point that the defense rested their case and we heard closing arguments from both sides. Now, after my deliberations, it is the judgment of this court that while the Twitter Mafia presented a strong emotional case on the whitewashing and sexual immorality of the film business in general, their evidence did not meet the standard of this court to warrant a charge of cancellation on Sidharth or the filmmakers of the film Manike, thank God. What I did get out of this pre-trial motion hearing is that the exculpatory discovery of the political underpinnings of this case show further evidence that right-wing nationalists may be encroaching on the arts and are most likely using it for propaganda in order to depict themselves as victims. Victims become voters and they vote for whoever promises to give them protection. But what if the people victimizing them are the same ones offering them protection? I mean, if the mountain won't come to Jack, Jack must go to the mountain. The violence that has been publicly linked to this group, i.e., burning down film sets in India, and of course the recent riots in England, suggests that the entire hashtag boycott Bollywood political movement is likely a scam designed to disrupt the economy and political landscape of India. If this is true, then it is unfortunate that instead of working to solve food insecurity and education crises, the Twitter Mafia is wasting their time crying about movies. The box office reception that the public had to Padmavat is testament to the true intent of most filmmakers, and that is to make entertaining films that the people want to see. As you'll remember, Padmavat, starring Ranveer Singh, was banned in 4 states in 2018 after nationalists said it was insulting to the Hindu community. India's Supreme Court later reversed the ban, and the film went on to be one of India's most successful films in history. You just cannot separate people from their entertainment, and you shall not use their entertainment as a catalyst for your bullshit propaganda. Now, yes, indeed, there are huge problems in the acting industry, just like any other industry. But these problems can only be solved by actors themselves, and it should not be the public's responsibility to decide who can act where and who cannot. Just because you know actors' names, it doesn't mean you own them. You would never go tweet about the accountant at McDonald's because you don't know him. So don't tweet about your actors' jobs. It's beyond the purview of your mandate as an audience. And so, it is for all of these reasons that the Twitter Mafia's case is dismissed, and I'm throwing it out of this court with prejudice. I also grant the defense's request for an injunction on the Twitter Mafia to stop using the tragic passing of SSR as a socio-political tool. Let his family grieve in peace as they work on moving on. Using the name of a person who has passed for personal gain is disgusting. Where were you when they were alive? And this court will not stand for it. In closing, this court urges you, the Twitter Mafia, to stop worrying about the mechanics of the film business and to instead worry about your own impact in your own communities. Go ask your politicians why they haven't delivered on all the promises that they made, and don't stop until they do deliver. Don't be like biblical locusts roaming around the internet looking to destroy everything people have built to support and feed their communities. Let the actors unionize on their own in order to solve their own problems. And to the actors, only you understand the hardships you all go through. So only you can solve them. Not the media, not the public. Definitely not social media. So unionize. But don't make one big union. Don't repeat that mistake. Make several decentralized smaller unions and then coordinate between all of them to make massive change. Appoint actors you trust to hold your interests at heart as the leaders of those unions. Don't go on TV and talk about behind the scenes secrets and challenges like the casting couch. Work together behind the scenes to resolve it, to protect the new crop of actors coming into the industry. We don't know what goes on in mine shafts underground, and for a reason. We don't need to know what goes on behind the scenes of the movies. This is the only way to resolve your nepotism and casting couch problem. The reason why the Twitter Mafia has been able to strangle this business of yours is because you are all in disarray. It's a feeding frenzy in the entertainment world, and you're the food. You are the ones who need to organize strikes if you are unhappy with conditions, or else the RSS will feed on you too. Be like Armin Sandhu. She's the bravest woman in the industry for doing what she did. She's a leader. Be like Ranveer Singh and just walk away from those situations. And finally, as for Sidharth Malhotra, you are free to go and prosper in your filmmaking career. As the Supreme Court Justice of the comment section, I, Judge Rebble Pebble, hereby formally dismiss all charges against you under Section 7 of the GCSC. I am also issuing an order of protection for you, Sidharth, against any further harassment from the internet. If anyone bothers you, Sidharth, notify my court immediately, and those individuals will be charged with first-degree MOPD or minding other people's business, which is punishable by up to 12 years of bad karma. This case is hereby closed. Thank you. Dhanyavad.